Hi everyone, welcome back. Welcome back, and thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of our Speaker and Author Success Series. So glad to have you be a part of this. And as usual, I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day, out of your busy schedule to join us this evening. And also, I just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. And so if you're new to our show, welcome, glad to have you. And if you're returning, excellent, welcome back. And I want to just ask you to look for the chat box or the question box in your menu bar there and type me a little note. Let me know if you can hear me okay. That is so important to our time together. So just go ahead and type in a quick note there. Okay, great. Can you hear me? Excellent. Hearing great. Okay, great. Thanks. Sounds good. Excellent. Thank you so much for indulging me with that. Really, really appreciate it. And so excited to just go ahead and get started. So today's topic is the art of the interview and why interviews increase sales. And I just want to let you know that we do have a sponsor. As usual, every week we have a sponsor. And our sponsor this week is the Speaker's Toolbox. And I'm sure you'll be real excited and thrilled to hear the details about that. So more to come on that information for you. And again, I just want to remind everyone that our promise to you is to provide information about the latest tools and strategies, to deliver our best effort in our research and the information and content that we have for you, and to provide you with ethical and inexpensive ways. Inexpensive is a key word. Ethical is more key. Inexpensive and ethical ways to attract visitors to your page and turn them into stark raving fans, because we all need stark raving fans. As entrepreneurs, whether we're authors, speakers, or coaches, we're all in business to make money. And we just couldn't be successful without stark raving fans. Sound right? All right. Yes. Agree. Great. So are we ready to get started? Oh my gosh, here we go. I want to share with you a quote that I found recently that I just love. And it's by Michael Hyatt. If any of you are familiar with Michael Hyatt, he recently published an article called What Every Author Should Know About Radio and Television Interviews. And it's on his website, michaelhyatt.com. And this was his quote: "Writing a great book is half the job. The other half is embracing your role as the book's chief spokesperson. If you do this well, you have a chance of creating a long and successful writing career." Isn't that great? And you can see where I inserted my own comments too. You know, writing a great book, I would say, or creating a great product or service is half the job. The other half is embracing your role as the book's or products or services chief spokesperson. And if you do this well, you have a chance of creating a long and successful writing or other, could be speaking or coaching, career. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Anybody hear that before? I happen to love that. I think it's a great quote. And it's really the basis of tonight's episode and tonight's topic, which is that if we're going to be successful in our business, whether we're selling books or our speaking services or coaching services, we really do have to be the chief spokesperson for those products and services. As the creator of those products and services, it's really up to us. No one's going to do it as well as we do it. Do you hear what I'm saying there? And so that's why this quote is so important to me, and it fits right in with tonight's topic about doing interviews. And so I want to talk about interviews for a minute. And I just want to kind of clarify what we mean when we say interview. What kinds of interviews are we talking about tonight? And I've broken this into two categories, one being online interviews. And online interviews, really, I'm talking about online radio interviews, blog interviews, which, you know, blog could be text file, blog file, webinar interviews, kind of like what we're doing here, but as an interview format. Google Plus interviews, that's another popular new trend that's out in the marketplace today. But anything that's online, anything you can watch or read or listen to, so video format, audio format, or text format online, that's an interview. And then I would say we have offline interviews as well. And so offline interviews could be TV interviews where you actually go in or call into a radio station. Print interviews, these might be interviews you see in a magazine. Phone interviews, and you could, again, dial into a phone interview that could be used for either a TV or radio interview or a print interview. And then event interviews. And by event interviews, I'm talking about things like meet and greets. As an author, if I'm doing a book signing, I also want to try to line up an interview at the book signing where people can ask me questions, or I have a particular guest, host, who's emceeing the event for me, who's going to ask me a series of questions. So event interviews are also forms of interviews. So really, tonight's topic covers a range of types of interviews and span quite a range in terms of online versus offline. And I think this information will really suit either of the formats. I'll call out a couple of unique differences, but again, I think it will suit either of the formats. So just keep in mind, when I say interview, I'm speaking broadly and in terms of online and offline interviews. And again, I'm speaking about our opportunity to be our spokesperson, or the spokesperson, I should say, for our products and services, our books, our speaking topics, our speaking opportunities, and our coaching services. So, why do interviews increase sales? Why do we need interviews? Well, as entrepreneurs, we need to get as much publicity as we can for our products and our services. And one way to do that is through interviews. Interviews are a great way to increase sales. And I want to just share with you a couple of them here. So, one is that interview forums have the ability to reach customers that you can't reach on your own, or that I can't reach on my own. And that could be anywhere from hundreds to thousands to really hundreds of thousands, depending upon how big the interview forum is. And the other thing about interview forums is that when I'm partnering with the host, then I'm getting exposure to their list, their audience, the group of people they've already been doing business with who are tuning into their show or episode, so to speak. Does that make sense? The other point I would say is that interview forums usually have a niche topic or a theme. And if you align yourself with the right interview forum, that really helps you reach the right target audience for your book or your product or your coaching service. Really helps you to reach that particular audience, and that's really helpful. But it's really also important for us to be careful about the forums we're aligning ourselves with, but it gives us an opportunity to directly target the audience that we want to make sure we have some presence with. Also, I would say that with interviews, guests are featured from 15 minutes to a full hour, depending on the forum. And that's really nice. And that gives greater visibility over a longer period of time, and then again to this wider audience, right? So there are some forums that are short, might have a 15-minute interview, and it's kind of a quick snip. And those are great interviews. You know, a 15-minute interview for me to interact with someone else where we're talking about my service or product is a lot longer time in terms of visibility than a 30-second ad spot or, you know, a quick 5-second pay-per-click ad, right? But if it's an hour long, that's even better. And I'll share with you that I've had the pleasure and privilege of doing both. And so if I can do both, then that extends my presence, that extends my reach in terms of my visibility, getting a chance to articulate my passion and the benefits of my gift and my product, and also my presence, right? So really something that's, you know, a unique benefit to interviews in particular. And then I would say that if it's an online interview, what's so great about that is that internet attendees, they're at a desk, plugged into a computer, they're online, and they tend to be a little more ready to make a purchase. And so if I can tune in to someone who's listening online, the internet is there at their disposal. They can go right to the website that I'm going to refer people to, or whoever is being interviewed is going to refer people to, and if they're really interested, they'll make a purchase right there. So another big win for doing interviews, especially online interviews. Love that. And then I would say that internet shows in particular, sometimes offline shows will do this too, but internet shows in particular will promote your appearance online to their networks after the event, right? Sometimes long after the event. And they'll turn that into an archived interview online, or make it available as an iPod, or make it as available as an iTunes, and that gives you even longer lasting exposure. So interviews are really critical, I think, in terms of our overall marketing mix and our success as entrepreneurs, and whether, again, we're promoting our book or our speaking business or our coaching service, we really do want to make sure to have a balance in our marketing activities of different things we're doing, but also we want to make sure to do some interviews. And again, these are some really great reasons of why we want to do interviews. I will say I personally have had some really good success with interviews. And so if you've never done an interview before, this might be kind of unfamiliar territory, and so it might seem a little uncomfortable. Anything that's new, right, could be a little uncomfortable. Has anyone, let me just ask real question, if you just type yes or no in the question or chat box, have you ever done an interview? Have you been interviewed before for your book or your coaching service or speaking service? Anybody? Interesting. Okay. Yes, been interviewed before, but it's been a long time. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. No, never been interviewed. Sounds like an interesting idea. Okay, excellent. Very good. So a little quiet on this topic. Maybe you're not sure if you've been on an interview, or it's not something that you had a real positive experience with, and we're going to try to rectify some of that tonight. So I want to just share with you some suggestions for preparing for an interview. If you decide this is something you want to do, we're going to share some suggestions for preparing for an interview. And then next week I'm going to talk in more detail about how to get interviews, because that's a longer conversation and I want to make sure to give it enough time and energy. And so next week you'll want to tune back in next week and we'll talk about how to get interviews. But tonight we're going to talk about how to prepare for them. So number one, prepare thoroughly and in advance. And what I mean by thoroughly and in advance is, I mean, you know, the morning of an interview is probably not far enough in advance for me to thoroughly prepare, meaning I'm going to anticipate the dialogue, I'm going to anticipate the questions, I'm going to phrase in my head how I'm going to respond, and I'm going to try really hard to do my best to drive the conversation, steer the conversation to what I want to talk about. Because even though I'm being interviewed, I do have some freedom. I do have the luxury of steering the conversation as it makes sense for me. There are certain things I want to talk about my book or my service or product. I want to make sure that message gets out clear, and I want to make sure that I know what the message is and I'm prepared to navigate the conversation to that particular point. So something to think about. Thoroughly prepare in advance. And I would say a couple days in advance, and if you've never done one before, I would say script out some canned responses that you can rattle off easily. Practice verbally out loud so that you can rattle them off easily and so that they sound natural to you. Suggestion number 2 is know the audience. And that is so important because not all shows or episodes, radio, offline, online, not all events have the same audience. And it's really important to know who your audience is, because your audience is really who the show's about. And if I am speaking to an audience that is really unique, that might have some unique customs or unique culture, I want to be really sensitive to that as I'm speaking to them so that I don't offend anyone, as an example. And I want to make sure that I'm hitting on the unique commonalities, the topics and areas of interest that I know my audience cares the most about. I'm trying to make a good impression. Now, I may have 15 minutes to do that. I may have an hour to do that. But I want to make sure that however long I have to do that, I want to hold their attention the entire time. And so I want to know my audience. I need to know who I'm speaking to, because I'm not just speaking to the interviewer. You know, the whole point of this is to have this air in front of a big audience, and I want to be really mindful of who that audience is. I want to know their character makeup. And so I'm going to do some research in advance to understand who my audience is. Are they mainly women? Are they a certain age group? Are they in a certain demographic? Are they in a certain part of the country? Are they in a certain education status? You know, what is it about them that I need to know? And I'm going to pick and choose stories that will naturally resonate with that audience, right? As I'm sharing about my products and services and telling my story, I want to pick and choose stories and examples and statistics, whatever it is I'm going to talk about. I want to make sure it resonates with that audience. So know the audience. Very, very important. Number 3, remember that the show is not about you. And I think that's the hardest thing for us to get through our heads sometimes. This isn't about me. When I'm invited to do a radio show, it's about the audience and it's about the main point of the message. So if I'm a speaker or an author or a coach, I have a main point I'm trying to get across in all 3 of those products and services. And the show is not about me as a human being who created this fantastic work. It's about the message, the key points I want to get across. It's about how well the audience needs to hear that information and how that information benefits them. Benefits is a huge key word. Think so clearly about the benefit of your product and your service, and make sure to be really clear in articulating your benefit. Show's not about us as individuals. They don't really care about our experience. They don't really care how we started this whole endeavor as writers or speakers or coaches. What they really care about is the meat of the information that we have to share and how it's going to help them, why they need it, how they can't live without it, if you know what I'm saying. So real important, the show is not about you. And a lot of times, the show is more about your interviewer. And so be really conscientious about that. And if you're interviewing someone and they have some deliverables out there themselves, maybe you're interviewing someone who's already written a book or who has done a lot of these shows, listen to a couple of their prior shows, quote them. You know, in the middle of your talk, if you can say, well, Joe, like you always say, and then quote them back. Or, well, Mary Jane, I read in your last book, and quote them back. Oh my gosh, you just made best friends with the person that's interviewing you, and you made a connection for the audience because the audience is already familiar with them. The audience has already been tuning in and is already familiar with what they say or what they put in their book, and you're just going to remind everybody and show them that you're connected. That resonates really well with people. Suggestion number 4, don't expect the interviewer to have read your book or to know your product or service. I know, doesn't that sound crazy? I can send a copy of my book to a person who's going to interview me, and 9 out of 10 times they haven't had a chance to read it yet. And that's just the reality of it, because interviewers are so busy. They're lining up guests one week after another, some days one day after another, and they just don't have time to read all the content that gets sent to them, to take a look at all of the products that get sent to them. And so I just go into it expecting that the person who's interviewing me hasn't read my book. They don't know. So I'm going to help them. I am not going to let them fall on their face. I am not going to let them say or do anything that's going to embarrass them. I'm going to jump right in, answer the question for them. I'm going to really help them in terms of making sure that the interview itself stays on track, that I get my key points across, and I certainly don't want anybody to look bad while I'm a guest. Because, why, you ask? Because I want to be invited back. That's so important. If I have an opportunity to be introduced to an audience, and it's a good audience and it's my market, and they could become my potential clients, I want to come back 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times if the interviewer will have me. And the best way that I can get invited back is to make it really easy for that person who scheduled me. Make sense? Any questions yet? I just want to make sure I'm not missing any questions or comments. Let's see. Nope, doesn't look like it yet. All right. Again, remember, you can type in the chat box or the question box. Awesome. Let me just look here. Okay, great. So here we go. I'm going to go on. Suggestion number 5. Be able to explain what your book, product, or service is about in a few sentences. So this is where the elevator pitch is really important too. And for those of you who are speakers, or for those of you who have had to write a book proposal, you know what I'm talking about here. Internet marketers understand this better than anybody. I want to be able to tell in 2 or 3 sentences what my book is about. It should not take me 20 or 30 sentences to get the main concept, the main benefit, the main value of my book, my product, or my service about. I can talk in detail about some of the components of it, but I want to be able to get to the point pretty quickly. And that allows me to cover a whole lot more territory when I can be clear and succinct and concise in my conversation. Then I can cover a lot more ground in terms of the things I want to talk about. So just something to keep in mind. Number 6, listen carefully to the questions. And I will say don't multitask while you're doing an interview, because you can't listen while you're multitasking. And the last thing you want to do is find yourself caught off guard because you didn't hear the question right, or you don't want to use valuable time by answering a question that wasn't asked. Right? So listen carefully to the question. Make sure that you're really in tune to the conversation, that you're answering the question, the right question, the question that's being asked, the question that you heard, and not kind of running off down some other area that's not really related. Your interviewer is going to have an agenda, and you can still steer the conversation to fit your message and what you want to say, but listen carefully to the questions. So important. Suggestion number 7, keep your answers brief and to the point. Again, so that kind of goes back to the last one. Keep your answers brief and to the point. Now, we can elaborate and we can embellish with stories and real life examples and statistics and famous quotes. We can quote ourselves, or we can quote someone else that we've quoted, maybe in our book or in our coaching service. But make sure that you keep your answer brief. You know, again, we don't want to ramble into the weeds about things that don't make a lot of sense, and especially not just to fill up airspace, if you know what I mean. A lot of interviewers are really fearful of dead air. They don't want anything to just be quiet. Silence can be an interviewer's worst nightmare, and so I understand that they don't want that, but we do want to keep our answers brief and to the point, but we can embellish and elaborate with stories, and stories are so great as long as you have time to tell the whole story. So if you have a 10-minute story, a 10-minute story is probably not going to fit well in a 15-minute interview because you want to tell 2 or 3, right? But if you've got an hour-long segment, and you know that you've got 15-minute blocks, you could tell a 10-minute story in one of those blocks. That would work fine, I think. Not a problem there. Awesome. All right. Number 8, don't become defensive. Don't become defensive. All questions, in my opinion, are fair game. If I'm willing to put myself out there and be interviewed, then I need to be prepared to answer any question. And there are very tactical ways to answer unpleasant questions. But if I'm genuine and I'm honest in my response, I really can't go wrong. I won't offend anybody, but I need to not be defensive. And I'm willing to take the hard questions. I haven't really been asked too many hard questions, but I'm willing to take them. And most interviewers, unless you're on CNN or something, most interviewers are pretty kind. They're pretty good at showing grace to the person they're interviewing because they know that this isn't our day job. They know that we're not always comfortable being on the hot seat, so to speak, but we certainly don't want to become defensive. And we don't want to lose our cool, and we don't want to lose our focus. And if we get defensive, we lose our opportunity to tell our message, right, to hit on those key points that are so important for us to hit on. So again, just really important. Whatever happens, don't get defensive. And again, also because you might want to be invited back. And if your interviewer senses at all for any reason that you're getting defensive, it will become really evident very clearly. Number 9, be energetic and authentic. So these are kind of 2 things, right? Energetic and authentic. But be energetic and be pumped up and be ready to have a really good time. And for some of us, this might mean we're being a little more boisterous or a little more outgoing than our authentic self. And I'm not asking that we do anything that's a far stretch or a far cry from our inborn personality, but I am suggesting that we can turn the energy level up, right? We can get our exercise in right before the interview so the blood is pumping. We can walk around the house or walk around the block and get that energy going, get that blood pumping, get that heartbeat racing so that you sound alive. And especially if it's an online interview and people can't see you face to face. Have energy in your voice. Make sure that you speak with enthusiasm and passion. And make sure that your energy fits the mood, right? Make sure your tone fits the mood. But be energetic if you can. And then be authentic. Be your authentic you. Be yourself. You know, I have no problem poking fun of myself, and I have no problem laughing out loud at myself. I actually, you know, enjoy laughing. And so I'm really good to do that throughout an interview. You know, I like making jokes. I like having fun. I like interacting with spirited people. And so I have no problem just having a good time. And I try to let that come through in my interview. I like to meet with people. I like to connect with people on that heart level. And an interview is a great way to do that, especially if you find yourself connecting with your host right away. If you can connect with your host and have your energies play off each other, it builds a real dynamic relationship very quickly, and the audience will catch that. It's just like watching, you know, a big screen movie, right, in the theater. You can tell pretty quickly if an actor or an actress have that chemistry together, and when they do, oh my gosh, the movie is just fantastic. And interviews are the same way, and you can hear that chemistry come across, whether it's online or offline, every time. And so try to make that connection. It will help you have a lot more fun while you're doing this. And then again, just be authentic. You know, I have no problem speaking my truth in love and kindness. And I know sometimes I say things that, you know, are not always the most popular. Sometimes my statements are not always well received, and I'm okay with that. And I don't mind saying in advance, oh, I think I'm going to say something that's going to hurt someone, and I don't mean to. I don't mean offense. It's just, you know, how I feel. And the other thing, too, is I just want to share my own personal experience, strength, and hope, because that's mine. And that's unique. And you can't really argue with someone's experience, strength, and hope. And so if all I'm doing is sharing mine, then I'm pretty safe. There's not a whole lot that I'm going to do that's going to offend anybody or alienate myself. And so I would say look to speak your love in truth and kindness. Have a good time. Be energetic. Have a positive spirit. Get that blood flow running and your heartbeat racing. And then have fun. This should be fun, really. This shouldn't be a stressful thing. And if you find yourself preparing for an interview and you go through the process and you decide it's just not for you, well, that's okay. I mean, not everything that's available for us to do in terms of marketing is stuff that we're going to naturally align to. I totally get that. But give it a shot at least once if you've never done it before, because you don't want to miss the opportunity of the exposure. So just something to keep in mind. And then I would say number 10, refer listeners or viewers, if it's live viewers, refer them back to your book, your product, or your service. Make sure that you're constantly pointing people to the item that you're trying to sell. Again, we are entrepreneurs. We are doing this to make money. We're in, you know, this is a business for us. Because if it's not a business, then it's just a hobby. But for me, it's a business, and I want to make sure that every chance I get, I point people back to my book. And, you know, it might be as simple as, well, in chapter such and such of my book, I explain that, ABC, and then I talk about what that chapter talks about. Or if it's one of my products or my services, I'm going to make sure to say, oh, right, well, in this service, we address this in this way, or a key benefit addresses this particular need. And so I want to make sure to refer people back to my book or product or my service. And if I'm working with an interviewer who is very sophisticated in this area, they will also automatically do that. They will also automatically tell their listeners or their viewers, oh my gosh, this is really sounding great. You guys don't want to miss this. Go check it out. If I'm working with a really great interviewer, host, I should say, who's done this a gazillion times, at the end, he or she's going to help me, now where do our customers find you? How do people find you? Where do we go to buy your stuff? How do people get to know more about you? What's the easiest way to reach you? And there's my plug. That's my opportunity to tell them very clearly, this is where you can reach me. This is how you can book me. This is where you can buy my book, whatever it is. Don't be afraid to tell people how to find you. And it's just so important to do that throughout the interview. And that's just something we're not really used to. A lot of us, if we don't have a sales background and we're afraid of seeming overly pushy or overly cautious, we might play this part down. But that's a big disservice to the audience, because if they're our target market, and if we're resonating with them on a deep and personal level, and if we believe deeply in our products and our services, then we're doing a disservice to them if we don't keep pushing them back, keep directing them, keep referring them back to those products and services, right? I mean, if we didn't think this stuff was helpful, we certainly wouldn't have put it out there. At least that's my hope. My intuition tells me that if we didn't really believe in it ourselves, we wouldn't have gone to the trouble to put it out there. And if we're going to put it out there, then we might as well do it wholeheartedly and make sure we refer people back to it. Does that make sense? A lot of stuff. Is this good stuff? How's everyone doing out there? Boy, I have a quiet group tonight. You guys doing good? Awesome. All right. Oh, thank you. Type a little note in the chat box, if you will, and let me know you're still with me. Excellent stuff. Great information. Thank you. Excellent. Now, some of you may have done interviews before, and this is just a really great opportunity to kind of refresh your skills, think about some new approaches. For those of you who've never done one before, though, it shouldn't be a scary thing. Interviews are fun, and really it's just you and another person, just you and another individual, another human being talking about what's passionate for you. I can sit down and have coffee and talk about my passions all day long, and if I look at an interview sort of in the same light, then it's a lot of fun, right? Does that make sense? Awesome, awesome. So I mentioned next week that I'm going to talk in a little more detail about how to get interviews. And I'll share with you at that time some tips for getting interviews, whether you're an author, a speaker, or a coach. And I want to make sure you join me again for that, definitely. Let's see. Awesome, awesome. One message came over a little garbled, so you might have to type that one back in. I see a question, but it says I'm listing, and then it's a little garbled. So your hands might have been just off the keyboard a little bit, so I'll give you a second to kind of send that one back in. All right, this is great. So let me just share with you then that we do have a word from our sponsor today. Like always, we do. Again, low cost, affordable sponsor for you. And today's sponsor is the Speaker's Toolbox. And the Speaker's Toolbox is really a collection of information to help people overcome their fear of public speaking and to help people do better in professional speaking. And so this is a really great complement for people who want to get into interviews. And this is actually a toolbox that I created with the help of my husband based on our own personal experience. We've done a lot of public speaking, and we've done a number of interviews, and we have great success with both. And so we thought we'd put together this toolbox for anybody who's trying to overcome the fear of speaking and trying to improve their speaking. So authors and coaches, this might be for you. If you're a speaker, you probably already know this stuff, but authors and coaches or other entrepreneurs, this might be for you. So let me tell you what's in the toolbox. 25 tips for speaking like a pro, which is an audio recording. It's a downloadable MP3, and you get an outline, a PDF outline that you can print out and have with you to take notes on as you're going through the audio file. Really helpful. I'm a big fan of outlines because I like to take notes while I'm going through. And my memory gets jogged, or my ideas get stimulated, and I want to write things down. I don't want to forget them. So 25 tips for speaking like a pro, the audio recording, and the outline. And then you also get Public Speaking 101, which is an audio recording MP3, including an outline to take notes on while you're going through it. including a checklist so that when you do your first public speaking gig, you'll have a checklist to go through, including a worksheet to help you sort of work through some of those public speaking do's and don'ts and tips. So Public Speaking 101, audio recording, outline, checklist, and worksheet. And those last three items are PDFs, downloads. They come with the package. You also get, as a bonus, a live event checklist. And so this is something that you want to have handy if you're doing a live event. This helps you think about all the things you need to be prepared with, bring to the table, follow-up actions, anything like that, a live event checklist, PDF. And then also I'm throwing in a marketing checklist. Again, and this is for people who are doing speaking engagements. So interviews count as a speaking engagement, whether it's offline or online, whether it's face-to-face or over the internet. And so there's a marketing checklist to help you just make sure you've got all your ducks in a row so that when you go into this experience, you're well prepared for it. And then finally, there's an audio recording and an outline. Again, I'm a big fan of outlines. Audio recording and an outline of a conversation between my husband and I. It's professional speaking tricks of the trade. And it really is kind of our hot tips. Actually, he's interviewing me, so it's a great example of an interview. That just occurred to me. Imagine that. Great example of a real interview and how much fun we have together while we're doing it. But it also gives me a chance to sort of share how I tackle, personally, my own interviews or my own speaking engagements. So the Speaker's Toolbox, 25 tips for speaking like a pro, the audio recording and outline, plus Public Speaking 101, kind of the basics for public speaking, audio recording, outline, checklist, worksheet, and then a separate live event checklist to help you prepare if you do have an opportunity to speak in front of people. And this could be at a book signing, it could be at an event, it could be to promote your coaching service, whatever it is. And then a marketing checklist, because you know me, I'm a big fan of marketing all around. And you want to make sure to market the heck out of your opportunities. And then this really great interview, Professional Speaking Tricks of the Trade, between my husband and I, really fun. I think that that's just really fun. Cost. Yep. Good question. I'm getting there. So it's actually very affordable, and I'm glad that you asked the question. It's only $47 for all of that. I know, not bad, eh? $47. Here's the URL. Let me see if I can type that in the chat box, whoops, for you, just for those of you who want to just click on the link and put it in your browser. Here we go. Type a message. Good night. All right. Send it to the entire audience. Awesome. Here we go. I just typed it into the chat box. You can click directly on that link, so please feel free to do that. And that will take you to a shopping cart little box to enter your credit card or however you want to pay for it, $47. And then once you pay for it, you will automatically be directed to the download page. And so as soon as you hit the purchase button, sit tight for a minute, your screen will refresh, you'll be taken to a download page, and then you want to go ahead and earmark that page, save it for your file, your safe, secret, special files for safekeeping, or go ahead and download those files to your hard drive so you can access them over and over again and at your next convenience. So the Speaker's Toolbox, I hope you found tonight's session helpful. Was that helpful? Did you get some good information, some new information, I hope? Excellent. Okay, good. Good feedback. Yes, some good stuff. Excellent. Yes, had never thought of interviews before. Now can't wait for next week. Right. Yes, come back next week. Next Monday night, we'll go ahead and make sure to talk a little bit more about how to find those hosts and how to get those interviews. It's really not that difficult to do. I've done it a number of times myself, and again, I really enjoy the whole interview process. So just want to make sure to give you that information. Great session. Thank you, my friend. I hear you. Appreciate that. And with that said, I will make sure a replay of this is posted here shortly, probably within 24 hours. We'll post it on our website under last week's episode so you can watch it again. And stay tuned for next week where we'll talk more about how to get the interview. Awesome. Okay, everybody have a really great evening, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.